Come on, not again.
And the Chinese did it again. We recently saw the images of a new flying wing large drone flying over China. And this is probably just one of the many that the Chinese are either introducing in service or experimenting with or whatever. So I think it is legitimate the question, what are the Chinese doing with these aircraft and why they're doing it? I mean, some viewers complain that I cover China too much, but look at what's happening. There is stuff going on elsewhere in the world, but China is dwarfing everyone else. Anyway, welcome. I am Gus, and this is Millennium 7. In the last year, at least 3 very large flying wing Chinese drones have been identified. There are actually 2 different designs, the so-called crank kite and the classic flying wing, so let's see the difference first. The crank kite has a recognizable fuselage that has the shape of a kite, while the flying wing doesn't have a recognizable fuselage. In a crank kite, the 2 wings are structurally distinct and attached to a central body, like in a conventional plane. In the flying wing design, though, the fuselage is in fact integrated in the wing structure together with the engine nacelles. Sometimes the distinction is not so clear. The fuselage fairing and shaping might hide the difference and make them superficially look the same, but they are not. Why is this important? Because different shape hides a different optimization for potentially different missions. In fact, albeit similar in shape, the 2 types could behave aerodynamically in a different way. So the flying wing behaves like a wing, which is no surprise, I guess. It is the best configuration you can think of in terms of aerodynamic efficiency for subsonic and high subsonic flight, where aerodynamic efficiency is another name of the lift-to-drag ratio, which has several implications, but I think that the most important in this context is range. What I mean is that all else equal, same weight, same specific consumption, same fuel fraction and so on, a flying wing has a longer range than a conventional configuration. Generally, these wings have a modest sweep similar to airliners, optimized for high subsonic speed. The crank kite is different. The higher sweep of the leading edge in the central section could produce nonlinear lift like a delta wing does. What happens is that when the angle of attack increases a little bit, a system of vortexes is created by the chines on the fuselage, increasing the lift but also the lateral stability, which is notoriously a weak point of flying wings. A crank kite should in theory be capable of flying at higher angles of attack, which are useful to maneuver a bit more aggressively than a flying wing. For the same reason, it is a configuration more suited for naval use, but these drones we are talking about are clearly too big to be naval aircraft. Furthermore, having an actual fuselage allows for higher internal volume, and in theory, the higher angle of attack might allow for a comparatively larger takeoff weight. This may be the case also because the general proportions of the aircraft might allow for a, always comparatively, longer fuselage than a flying wing. In terms of stealth, the flying wing should be slightly better than the crank kite. Explaining why in intuitive terms is actually very difficult, so, well, for now, at least please just trust me. Anyway, despite the differences, the 2 configurations in terms of performance in a specific mission are quite similar, and they are both very efficient and very stealthy. If we forcibly have to find a difference in role, the flying wing is more suited for ISR and very long-range operations in contested environments, while the crank kite could be more a UCAV and an attack platform. So, how this applies to the Chinese mega drones. The first sighting of a larger-than-fighter-size flying wing or crankite probably happened in 2017. In a blurry satellite photo, a crankite unit was spotted. The location was an electromagnetic compatibility and radar cross-section measurement test facility near Gaobeidian, not far from Beijing. Most likely it was a mock-up built just for the tests. At the time, it was thought that it could be the fabled Chinese H-20 bomber, but the recent developments seem to suggest that it was one of the designs considered for the big drones we are covering today. In the same period, many different UCAVs with the same general configurations have emerged, but most of them are smaller, the size of a fighter aircraft or less. In this video, I'm not covering them, there's simply too many, but it is worth recalling, for example, the GJ-11, which is operational, and its naval variant, the GJ-21, which is almost operational. Another one that is probably in testing is the so-called Star Shadow, which should be a relatively compact multi-role platform. More recently, we have seen a new dual-engine stealth flying wing drone at Changchun Air Show, of which we know nothing. I personally don't think that anyone has a really clear picture of all the Chinese development in this area, but yeah, I'm digressing. In 2022, the video of another crankite drone in flight appeared on the Chinese internet. This was a little more than a silhouette against the sky, so it is not possible to make any meaningful analysis. Some believed it could be the Star Shadow mentioned above, but this seems to be larger than the Star Shadow. In 2022, another video emerged of what appears to be the same drone, and this time it was associated with the Avic CS500T, which appeared in static exposition at Zhuhai in 2022. At the expo, it was described as an ISR platform with secondary attack capabilities. However, the prototype seen at the expo seems, again, a bit too small. So the nature of these drones remains elusive, but it is another large crankite design that exists in the Chinese space. And in case you are thinking that I am a bit too vague, well, welcome in the world of Chinese OSINT, where there is an enormous amount of information, but very, very little is confirmed. Anyway, the next subject is much better defined. In November 2024, some pretty spectacular high-resolution images of a large yellow drone appeared on the Chinese internet. This was identified as the CH-7, whose scale model was presented at Zhuhai in 2018 and then again in 2022. The identification is not 100% reliable, but it is surely the best fit we saw so far. From the air show, we have some published data. The wingspan is 26 meters with a maximum takeoff weight of 10,000 kilos, which seems a bit low, honestly. The maximum speed is 500 knots and the endurance is up to 15 hours. It features a weapon bay of unknown capacity, and it was described as capable of carrying guided weapons and sensors. What we see in this picture is most likely a prototype with still the primer on, before being painted with the final livery. Seen from above, the fuselage box is quite clear, the wing is a lambda wing, very effective for stealth purposes. There are 3 control surfaces per side, and I can't see any leading-edge high-lift device. We can also very clearly see the platform alignment and some serrations typical of many stealth designs. The intake and the exhaust nozzle are both low observable designs, and the propulsion seems a single turbofan whose model at present is not known. There's this quite curious gap between the inner flaperons and the fuselage, but it is likely a prototype quirk. I believe it is going to disappear from the serial units if it is ever produced. There are several apertures for sensors and communication, albeit no nose radome is visible. There are also 2 larger scoops that might suggest the necessity of powerful cooling, hinting to the presence of a lot of electronics on board, and obviously this is not surprising. It is also worth noting that the fuselage chine is not very sharp, suggesting a somewhat different approach to stealth. It is an interesting drone, potentially a very capable low observability platform to be used for ISR or penetration and attack in contested airspace. But this is obviously not the end. In May 2025, another previously unknown flying wing appeared in satellite images. And this one was unexpected and huge. Malan Air Base is the Chinese home of unmanned aircraft in a relatively new area where huge hangars have been recently built. A blurry but huge flying wing was identified. Satellite image analysts estimate the wingspan at 52 meters. By comparison, the B-2 is about 53 meters and the B-21 is more than that. Many have drawn a parallel between this drone and the American secretive RQ-180, which should be an ISR-oriented flying wing of about the same size. However, we do not have clear pictures of the RQ-180, so yeah, it's difficult to tell. This large drone features a tapered wing with moderate sweep and high aspect ratio, hinting to a platform built for endurance and presumably high altitude. The picture is very blurry, so it is very difficult to discern any other detail. It seems to have two small vertical tails, and the central section where the fuselage should be seems to be raised as you would expect, so nothing revolutionary here. Anyway, there is a bit of mystery going on around this drone. Back in 2020 and 2021, pictures have been taken from the ground of an aircraft of a similar size and similar shape. It happened in California and in the Philippines. Everyone just assumed that these were sightings of the RQ-180, but now the appearance of this new flying wing casts a different light. Maybe the one seen over the Philippines was not American after all, and this is a fascinating hypothesis, but it is only speculation at this stage. But we are not done yet, because there's the sighting that caused me to drop everything and make this video. At the end of August 2025, a photo appeared on X of a large drone flying. As usual, it was blurry, so some believed it was the large flying wing we discussed before. To me, it seems more a crankite seen from behind. Then, in September 2025, the usual satellite image from Malan showed a previously unknown large crankite drone. Compared with the presumed CH-7, it was different in configuration, but similar in size. The wingspan has been estimated to be around 42 meters. However, the nose section seems larger, the entire fuselage seems larger, and the wing sweep is different, suggesting a design for slightly higher speeds. The usual blur doesn't allow us to distinguish fuselage details. It looks like a single-engine aircraft with stealth characteristics. And then, finally, in October 2025, we have a relatively clear video of a crankite large aircraft flying at low altitude. Analysts have dubbed it the GJX, but we don't know the official designation, in the same way we don't know the official designation of all these drones. Many commentators focused on the camouflage on the lower side of the aircraft, but that's not really relevant. What is relevant is the general configuration. It is similar to what we have seen on the satellite images, but it seems that the dorsal fairing containing the engines is larger than it appears in the top-down photos. This suggests a twin-engine configuration rather than a single engine. Split rudders are visible at the tip of the wing, but there is also a black line on the fuselage trailing edge that might hint to apertures or split surfaces. In the pictures we don't see weapons bays, but this doesn't mean that they are not there. Overall, the fuselage looks quite bulky, so possibly suitable for a relatively large payload. If I had to bet, I would say that this is a large unmanned bomber designed to penetrate contested airspace. So, here we are, with China flying at least 3, maybe 4 different large drone designs. And the first question is obviously why? And the second question is, what is the relation with the H-20, the stealth bomber that we know is being developed, but we haven't seen yet? So, one possibility is that all we are seeing is a large experimental program to develop the technologies associated with this type of aircraft. All these aircraft might just be prototypes to explore different solutions. The fact that most of these sightings happen at or near Malan Air Base is a sure sign that all these aircraft are still in development or in testing, but the question remains whether they are designed to cover a specific operational role or they are just flying test beds, flying technology demonstrators. I personally think that, knowing the Chinese, they have a role in mind for these aircraft. One possibility is that the GJX might act as a loyal wingman to the future H-20. We might envisage a package of one piloted platform with 2 or 3 uncrewed ones, which would greatly reduce cost, complexity, and the risk for human pilots. After all, the US has designed the B-21 to be optionally manned. However, unlike the B-21, these aircraft seem to have been developed as drones. In fact, there is no sign of a cockpit, and the configuration is not conducive to installing one. They all seem to have a large nose intake whose duct occupies the space, the area where the cockpit should be. Another possibility is that since the H-20 is delayed, they realized that they needed a large experimental program to acquire experience with this configuration in large sizes. It is a possibility, but I don't think it is very likely. China has flown similar configurations with smaller drones for a long time, so scaling up shouldn't be that difficult to require this large experimental program with several different prototypes. My take is that the most likely option is that all 3 of the large designs have their own role. The Large Flying Wing is a global range ISR platform, the CH-7 is an ISR and a network node with secondary attack or self-defense capabilities, the GJX is an unmanned penetration bomber. There are 2 engineering questions left though. Why the Chinese keep focusing on stealth while they are developing the Quantum Raider, which is designed exactly to defeat stealth? And why none of these designs are using all-moving wingtips like the J-50 and the drones recently seen at the Chinese parade? Well, to find an answer, you should watch the videos that are appearing beside me. This is it. If you liked what you saw, please consider supporting the channel. All the links are in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.